There's been a lot of talk about the opening ceremony at this year's Paris Olympics. In particular, there was a scene that depicted an interpretation of the Greek god Dionysus that caused a significant amount of outrage. Many felt like the imagery was making a mockery of Leonardo da Vinci's famous painting, The Last Supper, which is iconic as part of the Christian faith. As a result of all the ire and decamp, a spokesperson for the Paris Olympic Games offered an apology to people who are offended by the imagery.
Clearly, there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. On the contrary, I think that Thomas Joly really tried to really intend to celebrate community tolerance. That was his word yesterday, and looking at the result of the polls that we shared, we believe that this ambition was achieved. If people have taken any offense, we are of course really sorry.
Both Decamp and Thomas Joly, the ceremony's artistic director, doubled down that the imagery highlighted in the show had nothing to do with Christianity. In talking to BFM TV, a French news channel, Joly explained, "There is Dionysus who arrives on this table. He is there because he is the god of celebration in Greek mythology." He went on to add, "The idea was to have a pagan celebration connected to the gods of Olympus. You will never find in me a desire to mock and denigrate anyone." I'm Sonia Thompson, an inclusive marketing coach, strategist, and consultant focused on helping you attract a bigger, more diverse, and fiercely loyal customer base. Today we're going to talk about when apologies are warranted, because more and more we're seeing that brands are having to apologize for things that they're doing that people aren't happy with. But when is an apology necessary and when isn't? Let's get into it. Normally, my point of view when it comes to inclusive marketing and inclusive communications are that intentions are never the marker of success. How a product experience or communication makes someone feel, that is the marker that should be used. Now, obviously, in this case, there were a lot of people who were really upset by the imagery they saw during the opening ceremony, particularly as it relates to this scene. Even though their interpretation of what they were viewing was incorrect. However, in this instance, there are two core tenets of inclusive marketing that should be considered. The first tenet is all about values. Brand values should be at the core of every decision a brand or an organization takes. Values also help leaders stand firm even in the face of intense opposition. Joly explained that the imagery during that scene and throughout the opening ceremony were meant to highlight diversity and inclusion.
Ma volonté n'est pas d'être subversif, ni de me moquer, ni de choquer. Ma volonté est simplement de dire que nous sommes ce grand nous et que hier soir, c'était des idées républicaines, c'était des idées d'inclusion, c'était des idées de bienveillance, de générosité, des idées de solidarité, bref, de ce que je crois nous avons follement besoin. En France, on a le droit de s'aimer comme on veut, avec qui on veut. En France, on a le droit de croire ou de ne pas croire. En France, on a le droit, on a beaucoup de droits, voilà. Et c'était l'idée de faire transparaître ces valeurs-là à travers la scène.
Joly shared that the choices made in the ceremony were those that reflected his interpretation of France's inclusive values. So should an organization have to apologize for their values? I say no. The same way individuals shouldn't have to apologize for their values. Values are super important, and it's just one of the reasons why more and more consumers are using values. Upwards of 82% in one Google Cloud study are making buying decisions based upon whether or not a brand is aligned with their values. This connects to the second core tenet of inclusive marketing, which is all about choice. Inclusive marketing is all about acknowledging the many ways that consumers are different, and this part is important, intentionally choosing which of those identities your brand will serve and then intentionally, there's that word again, incorporating those identities throughout all parts of your marketing mix. Brands get to choose who they will serve. There's no expectation or obligation that they have to serve everyone, although nobody wants to be left out. Sometimes brands don't have the resources available to them to serve everyone. As a result of brands' ability to choose, sometimes people will be left out, and that's a brand's right. As a gluten-free person, no restaurant is obligated to have gluten-free items on the menu. Now, as a consumer, that completely frustrates me whenever they don't have those items on the menu, but the brand has that right to make that choice. Consumers also have the right to choose. If a brand doesn't serve their needs or align with their values, consumers can and do choose not to buy from that brand or give them their attention. If consumers feel that the Olympic opening ceremony is in conflict with their values, they can choose their response, which includes a boycott as well as expressing their disappointment, which many people have already done. While the organizing committee for the Olympic ceremony apologized for how the controversial part in the show was received, it did not apologize for the show. And there were plenty of people who were upset about that. Any good apology must express regret for actions you've taken. If the Olympic Organizing Committee stands by their choice that the decisions that they made for the opening ceremony were values-based and with no connection to any religion, then it makes sense not to express regret for those decisions. However, because so many people felt harmed by what they saw, from what seems to be a misinterpretation, it is appropriate to apologize for the offense the show caused. It's a fine line, but one that's worth noting. As a marketer, there will be times where people misinterpret or flat out disagree with a decision that you make or with a product experience or communication that you deliver. In those instances, stay true to your values. Apologize for harm caused. Clarify when necessary. But to be clear, you should never feel obligated to apologize for your values. I want to hear from you. What do you think of the apology? Should the Olympic Committee have apologized, or were they perfectly fine to just not say anything? Let's discuss. Tell me about it in the comments below. Until next time, remember, everyone deserves to have a place where they belong. Let's use our individual and collective power to ensure more people feel like they do. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you soon.